Hi, I'm Ashley, and today I'm going to share my application of the health belief model to my learning of the True North communication strategies. The health belief model construct that I'm focusing on today is called Perceived Susceptibility. In the context of the True North communication strategies lesson, perceived susceptibility means understanding how my own ego can interfere with productive and healthy communication, and maybe even negatively impact my relationship with others. This activity requires me to reflect on my own communication habits and think about situations where my ego may have negatively impacted my interactions at work, at school, or even in my personal life. So the first reflection question is, how often does your ego interfere with productive communication? When I reflect on how often my ego interferes with productive communication, I notice it happening most often with my family, but mainly with my brother. For example, there have been times when my brother and I have disagreed about how to handle a family situation, such as planning an event or dividing up responsibilities. And instead of slowing down to understand his perspective, I found myself quickly becoming defensive and insisting that my approach was the right one. This shift into competition rather than collaboration made the conversation feel tense and less productive. I think a lot of people can relate to how ego can still show up in sibling relationships, even as adults. The second reflection question is, what are the chances that ego-driven reactions have led to misunderstandings or conflicts with others? So when I think about the chances that ego-driven reactions have led to misunderstandings or conflict in my own life, I can recall moments in my friendships where this has happened. There was one time that a close friend once offered me feedback about how I was handling my stress, and instead of hearing her out, I immediately felt criticized. My ego kicked in and I responded defensively, assuming that she didn't understand me or she was just judging me. Because of that reaction, the conversation shifted from supportive to heated, and we both walked away feeling misunderstood. Looking back, the conflict didn't come from what she said. It came from my ego getting in the way of actually listening. The third reflection prompt is, identify moments where your need to be right, to win, or to control the situation affected the outcome of a conversation. So when I reflect on moments where I felt the need to be right, to win, or to control a situation, one example that comes to mind is a disagreement I had during a group project at work. We were all deciding on how to approach a task, and I was convinced that my idea was the most efficient because I had been there the longest and I felt confident that I knew how things would work best. So instead of opening the floor for discussion, I kept redirecting the conversation back to my point and dismissing the other ideas before truly considering them. My teammates became noticeably quieter, and eventually they stopped offering suggestions altogether. In hindsight, they weren't disengaging because they lacked ideas. They were disengaging because my strong attachment to my own idea made the conversation feel closed off. Looking back, I can see how my ego limited collaboration. And if I had approached the discussion with more openness, the team dynamic and the final outcome would have been much stronger. Thank you for joining me as I model this process, and good luck with your reflections.